Hello everyone. I welcome you all to this next lecture of Dynamics of Machine. And in today's lecture, we will be starting with the new chapter that is brakes and dynamometers. Okay. So first, let's study the brakes. Now, what is meant by a brake? As we all know, that brake is a mechanical device which is used to bring any other device which is in motion to rest position. Okay, so that is a brake. So braking system is not very complex. It is a pretty easy system, but just to understand how to calculate the amount of torque and the heat which is produced in the braking system, that we have to study. In fact, the amount of torque which one has to apply, or the amount of force that one has to apply in order to bring a moving object into rest position. Okay, so simply it is written over here that a brake is a device by means of which artificial frictional resistance is applied to a moving machine member in order to retard or stop the motion of the machine. Okay, so it is a device by the help of which we apply the frictional resistance. So when the frictional resistance is applied, the motion which is happening will tend to come at rest. And while doing this, what will happen? A lot of heat will be generated. Okay, so that heat has to be dissipated in the surrounding of the machine or surrounding of the braking system. Okay, so there might be different methods for dissipation of that heat. Maybe somewhere in some systems, if the lot of heat is generated, that is inertia is very high, then water may be circulated through the passage of in the brake drum. Okay, and otherwise in many systems, just air flow of air will be sufficient to remove the amount of heat which is generated. All right. So, as written over here, when the any object is in motion, it will be having kinetic energy, and once we are applying the brake, the application because of application of friction, that kinetic energy will be converted into potential energy, and hence that remaining energy will be converted in the form of heat. Now, we will be having various materials, braking materials, or various materials which will be uh, working as a brake, or which will be applied as a brake lining on the braking system. Okay, so what are the factors on which this material depend? So the unit pressure between the braking surface, the amount of pressure which we are applying on a brake, and ultimately that brake is applying that much amount of pressure on the moving object. Then second is the coefficient of friction between the braking surface. So obviously the friction is there, so the coefficient of friction plays a very important role. Third, the peripheral velocity of the brake drum. So this brake drum is not a general term. Brake drum or peripheral velocity of whatever object is rotating, and we are applying brake. We are applying brake on it. Okay. Fourth is the projected area of the friction surface. Yes, this plays a very important role. The amount of area which is coming in contact to the moving object will be directly proportional to the braking force. Okay, or other parameters. Fifth is the ability of brake to dissipate heat equivalent to the energy being absorbed. So the amount of kinetic energy which will be converted to either potential energy or to the heat, then that uh, the ability of the braking material will also play a major role to dissipate that amount of heat. Okay, so these are the major function difference between. Uh, there is major function difference between the clutch and the brake, and is that is clutch is used to keep the driving and driven members in motion together, but whereas the in case of brakes, one uh, tries to bring the other into rest, other moving object into rest, or for controlling that speed. Okay, so I hope this basics of brake are clear to you. Now let's see the classification of the brakes. There are basically three type of brakes, that are mechanical brakes, hydraulics brakes, and power brakes. Okay, So in mechanical brakes, one classification says that there are only of two types, that is drum brake and disc brake. But going further, we can see that they can be classified according to the direction in which force is applied. All right. So if the force is applied in radial direction, that is along the radius of the uh, uh, wheel, then it will be called as radial brake. Okay, and these radial brakes are again classified into two types, that is shoe brake or block brake, and second one is the band brake. Okay, and if the force is applied in axial direction, that is along the axis of the wheel, then that type of they are again further classified into two types, that is disc brake and cone brake. Okay, so here in this picture, you can see a type of block brake. Okay, so this is one block over here, and this is another block over here. Okay, and this outer periphery, as you can see. Let me hatch it. This outer periphery, which you can see, there is friction material or the braking material is applied over here. Similarly, behind this surface, there will be some friction surface. Okay, and this is called the drum. This drum will get mounted over here like this. Okay, with the help of this four bolts which are coming out, this will be mounted with the help of uh, nuts, and again the tire will be mounted with help of nuts over this. Okay, so as these expand, they will come in contact with this inside surface of this drum. Okay, and they will try to bring it to the rest. All right, and similarly here, so the force which is being applied is along the direction of the radius, right? As the radius is something like direction of radius is something like this. So the direction of force applied is along the radius of the wheel. Okay, therefore these are called radial brakes. Also, the axial brakes. So you might have seen disc brakes in different uh, bikes and cars, right? So what happens in disc brake? This is the disc, and the axis of the wheel is something like this. Here, as you can see, the bolts are coming out over here. The tire will come and get fixed. Okay. Now, when we apply the brakes, what will happen? This orange color, this is the oil, brake oil. Okay, this will when we press the lever at our hand, then the brake oil will flow through this, and it will push both these discs towards the uh, both these pads towards the this disc. Okay, and when they come in contact, they will try to stop this motion, and if this motion its motion is stopped, the wheel will also stop rotating. So as you can see, the direction of the force which is applied, it is along the axis of the wheel. This is the axis of the wheel. Okay, therefore they are called as axial brakes. All right. Then in power brakes, they are further classified into air brakes, air hydraulic brakes, vacuum brakes, and electric brakes. Okay, so we have to study as per our syllabus. We have to study these uh, type of brakes. All right. In fact, just block brake and band brake. This we have to study. All right. So we'll be studying this in further slides. Okay, let's move on. So the first type of brake which we'll be studying is the single shoe brake or block brake. Okay, so as you can see over here, there are two diagrams. So one of the diagram is for clockwise rotation of the wheel. This is the wheel, and here the wheel is rotating in anti-clockwise direction. Okay, over here you can see that this is the uh, block or shoe, whatever name we want to give, we can give it. This is the shoe. Okay, and this shoe or this block is attached to this lever. Okay, and this lever is pivoted at this point O. That is, it acts as a fulcrum point. Okay, so let's suppose this wheel is rotating with some angular velocity omega. Okay, and if you want to stop it, then we'll apply a force P over here, so that this block will come in contact with this wheel, and because of the friction which is generated, it will try to stop this wheel. Okay, so if it is not clear, let me just show you with this diagram over here. Okay, so this is your wheel. All right, and let me draw the center line for this wheel. All right, this is your wheel. Then I'm drawing the block with another color. So this is your block. Okay, and if you see the block as a separate entity, it will look something like this. All right, so this is your block, and it is uh, welded to a lever. Let me draw with this blue color. Okay, so this is the lever, okay, with which it is attached. All right, so this lever is pivoted at same height as over here. All right, so this is your fulcrum point O. Okay, and let's say this wheel is rotating with in clockwise direction. All right, so if I draw this, this will show me the angle. Okay, and this angle is 2 theta. Okay, similarly here also this angle is 2 theta. All right, now the force which we will be applying in this case is, this is the force P. Okay, this is force P which we will be applying in order to stop this wheel. This wheel is having radius r. All right, and the distance of this force which we are applying from the fulcrum point, the perpendicular distance is L. All right, and the distance of the center line of the wheel is x. Okay, this I'll explain on the other diagram also. Uh, the force, since we are applying force over here, we will be getting some reaction from the wheel on this pad, this red colored pad. Okay, so that will be in the radial direction from the wheel in the radial direction, and this is the normal reaction, that is Rn. Okay, and since this wheel is moving in clockwise direction, all right, so the frictional force which will be acting would be in this direction, that is F. Okay, so these are the nomenclature, and this is the type of diagram which you have to draw while solving such questions in your answer sheet while writing the exam. All right, so I hope the diagram is clear to you. Now let's go back to this. Okay, so this is distance x, this is distance L, the force from where the distance of line of action of this force P, and this is fulcrum point, okay, which is O. All right, and the normal reaction is Rn. Sorry, normal reaction is Rn, and this angle of contact of this block is 2 theta. Okay, and when the wheel is rotating in clockwise direction, the force Ft, that is frictional force, will be acting in this rightward direction. Okay, that is tangential braking force. Okay, or the frictional force acting at contact surface of the block and the wheel. All right, and when the wheel is rotating in anti-clockwise direction, the direction of the Ft will also get changed. Okay, rest all the things will remain same. All right, now one thing which we have to note over here is when this is called as normal or single block brake, when the angle of rotation is less than 60, sorry, angle of this wrap is less than 60 degree. Okay, this angle of wrap is less than 60 degree. So just go through this text. uh, I'll give you a minute for this. this. All right. Okay, so I hope you might have gone through this diagram. And so P is the force applied at the end of the lever. This is the P force. Rn is the normal reaction of this uh, of this block on the wheel. Okay. Small r is the radius of the wheel. 2 theta is the angle of contact. All right. This is the angle of contact. And mu is the coefficient of friction that we already know. And Ft is the tangential braking force. Okay. Or the frictional force acting at the contact surface of block and the wheel. Okay, so this type of brake is used in railway trains and tram cars. Okay, now what are tram cars? They are small lower gauge rails which are generally used for propagation within the city. Okay, this tram car, if you go to Kolkata, then you will come across this tram cars. All right. So tangential braking force is used to apply the brake. Okay, and this block is rigidly attached to this lever. All right. Now, uh, as you can see, if the angle of contact is less than 60°, then it may be assumed that normal pressure between the block and wheel is uniform. So the amount of pressure which is distributed over this entire block is a normal pressure. Okay, we do not have to take other profiles into the other profiles into consideration. Just we can assume that there is normal pressure acting between this block and the wheel. Okay. Then in such case, we can write that this tangential force, amount of this tangential force would be mu into Rn, right? This frictional force is equals to coefficient of friction multiplied by normal reaction. Okay, and also the torque, braking torque would be, what is torque? Torque is force into radius. So force into perpendicular distance. So this Ft force is acting at a radius r from this center of the wheel. All right. Therefore, the braking torque will be Ft into r, or we'll substitute this value of Ft is equals to mu into Rn into r. All right. Now, we can develop three different kind of cases depending on the position of this fulcrum with respect to this periphery of the wheel. Okay. So in the first case, this Ft force is in line, this line of action of this Ft force passes through the fulcrum. Okay. In the second case, we will see that the line of action of this Ft is passing below this fulcrum point. So this fulcrum point will be moved up over here. Okay. So the line of action of this Ft force will be above this. All right. And in the third case, we'll see that this line of action of Ft force will be above this fulcrum point. That is, this fulcrum point will move down. Okay. So what are the differences in such three cases? We will discuss after discussing these three cases. So in the first case, now if your basics of mechanics are clear, then this topic would be very easy to you. All right, that is taking movement about some fixed point O. All right, so we have to visualize a, number of forces which are acting in this system, and we have to take the moment of all those forces about this fulcrum point O. All right, and all these distances are already given to us. Now, in case one, when the wheel rotates clockwise, okay, here it is written, when the line of action of tangential braking force, that is Ft, passes through the fulcrum point O of the lever. Okay, so since its line of action is passing through this fixed point, then this Ft force will not be producing any moment. All right, but the forces this Rn and another force this P, these forces line of action are away from this fulcrum point by distance L and X respectively. So they will be producing some moment, obviously. All right, and we are taking this in case one. Again, there are two variations. That is when the wheel is rotating clockwise and when the wheel is rotating in anti-clockwise direction. All right. Now, uh, uh, as shown in figure 1a, then for equilibrium, taking moments about the fulcrum point O. So we'll considering this diagram first, that is figure A, when the wheel is rotating in clockwise direction. So Rn into x is equals to P into L. How? This Rn force is acting at a distance x, all right, and it is acting in upward direction. So this will try to turn this entire system in anti-clockwise direction about this point O. Okay, and the another force P, this is moving in, this is going in this direction, and it is at a distance of L from this fulcrum point. All right, and this will tend to rotate this entire system in clockwise direction. So in equilibrium, these two moments would be equal in magnitude, and hence we can write this Rn is equals to P into L upon X. All right, and hence the braking torque TB would be equals to mu into PL into R. All right. Now, what will happen when we will take this in anti-clockwise direction? Again, it will remain same because the direction of P and the direction of Rn has not changed. Only the direction of Ft has changed. But since this line of action of Ft is passing through this fulcrum point, therefore it won't be producing any moment. All right. Therefore, the braking torque would be again equals to mu into P into L into R. That is in both the conditions, the same amount of braking force will be required. All right. So I hope this case one is clear to you. Now let's move on to case two. What is case two? In this case two, just see the diagram. The Ft force, the line of action of this Ft force is not passing through this fulcrum point. The distance between this fulcrum point and the line of action of this Ft force is shown over here by distance A. Okay, so this is the difference and this is the case 2. What does case 2 say? When the line of action of tangential braking force Ft passes through a distance A below the fulcrum point O. Okay, and the wheel rotates. Again, we will take two cases, that is two conditions, when the wheel is rotating in clockwise direction and another one when the wheel is rotating in anti-clockwise direction. So let's talk about this case A, that is condition 1 for clockwise rotation. What will happen? Now see, again there are three forces. This P force will produce a moment about this fulcrum point O. Okay, this Rn force will produce a moment about this fulcrum point O. And now this Ft force will also produce a moment because line of action of Ft force is at a distance of A from this fulcrum point. Okay. So when the wheel is rotating in clockwise direction, this Ft force will be acting in right side, towards the right side. Okay. So this Ft force will try to rotate this entire system in clockwise direction. All right. Also, this force P will try to rotate in clockwise direction, and this force R will try to rotate it in anti-clockwise direction. And hence, we can write the equation as Rn multiplied by X plus Ft multiplied by A is equals to P into L. Okay, sorry, this Ft force will try to rotate in anti-clockwise direction. Uh, Please make a correction. This Ft force will try to rotate in anti-clockwise direction because the fulcrum point is above this line of action. Okay, so it will try to rotate the entire system in anti-clockwise direction. Therefore, these two moments will be taken one side of the equation, and this P into L will be taken in other side equation when it is in equilibrium. Okay, or we can write this Rn is equals to P into L upon X plus mu into A. Okay, and the braking torque for this condition will come out to be something like this. Now, when the uh, this is rotating in anti-clockwise direction, the uh, direction of Ft will change, and hence now it will try to rotate this system in clockwise direction. Okay, so this P will rotate the system in clockwise direction. This Rn will rotate system in anti-clockwise direction, and this Ft will rotate the system in clockwise direction. Okay, it will try to rotate the system in clockwise direction. Therefore, Rn into x will be one side and PL plus Ft into A will be on the other side. And in this case, the value of Rn is equals to PL into x minus mu into A. Okay, so as you can see the difference between these two, the two values of Rn, that is normal reaction for when it is rotating in clockwise direction. In the denominator, it is x plus mu into A. And here in the denominator, it is x minus mu into A. All right. And similarly, in the equation of braking torque also, same changes, will be reflected. All right. So this is the case 2. I hope these are clear to you. Now let's move on to next case. So in the next case, we will see that this fulcrum point is below the line of action of this Ft force. All right. This fulcrum point is below the line of action of this Ft force. Okay. So again, when this is rotating in clockwise direction, so this P force will try to uh, rotate the system in clockwise, and this Ft force also will try to rotate the system in clockwise direction. This Rn force will try to rotate the system in anti-clockwise direction. So these will be taken in same order and this will be taken in opposite order. Therefore, this equation will be developed that Rn is equals to PL plus Ft into A. Okay, or the value of Rn will come out to be Rn is equals to P into L upon x minus mu into A. Okay, and hence the braking torque will be Tb is equals to mu into PL into R upon x minus mu into A. Now again, if we consider this anti-clockwise rotation of the wheel, then only difference what would come is in the denominator, it will be x into x plus mu into A. Okay, so this is the difference which will be coming across. So as I hope this case 3 is clear to you, the only difference is the positioning of this fulcrum and the line of action of this Ft force. All right. So I hope this is clear to you. Now let's just analyze all these three once again. So in the first case, the line of action of Ft force was passing through this fulcrum. Okay. In the second case, the line of action was above the fulcrum. Sorry, the line of action is below the fulcrum. And in the third case, the line of action of this Ft force is above the fulcrum. So the difference, now I want to show you the difference, some similarities. In case 2, the clockwise rotation, the equation of the clockwise rotation, just look over here. Let me draw. Okay. So in the case 2, the clockwise rotation of the case 2 and uh, the anti-clockwise rotation of case 3 are similar to each other. The anti-clockwise rotation of case 3. That is, in the denominator, x plus mu into A in the case 3 anti-clockwise, and in the case 2 clockwise, it is x plus mu into A. Okay, so these two cases are very similar to each other. And when this P force, we are applying this P force in order to apply the brake. So in this case, as you can see in the clockwise direction, this PL, this friction force Ft into A, that is mu into Rn into A, it is supporting this P force, right? It is supporting this P force. So these kind of brakes are called as self-energizing brake. Okay, why? Because we want to apply this P force in order to apply the brake, but this uh, frictional force, that is mu into Rn into A, this is helping us. Okay, this is acting in the same direction with P force. So we don't have to apply so much amount of force. We only have to apply a small amount of pressure, and this friction force will help us in applying the brake. So such kind of brakes are called as self-energizing brake. Okay, and again in this condition where this friction force comes with the negative sign, then in that case such cases are called as uh, self locking brakes. Okay, so let me just show you clearly over here. So as you can see in this note, that uh, when the brake wheel rotates anti-clockwise in case 2, in case 2 when the brake wheel rotates in anti-clockwise direction. Okay, and in the case 3 when the brake wheel rotates in clockwise direction. All right. The equations 1 and 2 are same. That is Rn into x is equals to PL plus mu into Rn into A. So you can see over here that this mu into Rn into A is supporting this PL force. All right. From this we can see that the moment of friction force, that is mu into Rn into A, adds to the moment of force PL. In other words, the frictional force helps to apply the brake. Such type of brakes are called as self-energizing brake. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. The condition of self-energizing brake is this moment of friction force should be helping the PL moment. All right. Now, when the friction force is great enough to apply the brake with no external force, then the brake is said to be self-locking brake. Now, what is self-locking brake? What will be its condition? In above, we can see that if x, value of x is less than equals to mu into a. Okay, if the value of x is less than mu into a, what will happen? Uh, what will happen? Then the p will be negative or equal to 0. Okay, it is talking about this condition when the value of x, sorry, where it is? Here. So when the value of x in this, see in this equation, if the value of x is less than a, what will happen? It will make this term as negative. The value of Rn will come out to be negative. And if it is negative, then over here, it will come out as negative value. All right. So in this case, what will happen? The P will be negative or equal to 0. This means no external force is needed to apply the brake, and hence the brake is self-locking brake. That is, no external forces applied to no external force is applied to do the braking do the braking condition. The it will be that kind of condition is called as self-locking condition. The brake will be applied by itself only. Okay, so remember this condition that value of x should be less than the product of coefficient of friction and this value a. All right. Uh, the brake should be self-energizing and not self-locking. Okay, so this condition should be prevailing while designing a brake. But sometimes the self-locking brakes are also uh, useful. All right. In order to avoid self-locking and to prevent the brake from grabbing, the value of x is to be kept greater than mu into a. All right. This self-locking brakes, they are very useful when a car is climbing up a elevation. Okay. So, pardon my drawing. So let's say this is a car and it is climbing this elevation. All right. So this self-locking brake gets activated in the cars when this tries to move in downward direction. Let's say there is some obstacle over here and the driver has to apply brakes. Okay. And now the downward force is more than the upward force. Then what will happen? These wheels will try to rotate in opposite direction. So car will start going in the opposite direction. Okay. So in this case, these self-locking brakes are very useful. Also, these self-locking brakes are will come into play. They are mostly employed in the uh, automatic transmission of the cars, right, and not the manual transmission car. In that, if you release the your brake pedal and also release your accelerator pedal, then also in such slopes the vehicle will not move back. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you what is meant by self-energizing brake and self-locking brake. All right, so I'll end my session here. Thank you for joining.